Let's start by talking about how we got to right here. This graphic this is my life. First, the flags. At the end of World War II, we changed the world worked. Everything about it. It used to be we had sequestered imperial systems that would trade only within their own networks. Because if somebody threw a war, even if you weren't invited, it could disrupt your supply chain. So you kept everything in-house, and you fought to keep it in-house and expand your house. That eventually culminated in World War II, which tore the entire system down. So we, at the end of the war, changed everything. We used our Navy to patrol the global ocean so that anyone could go anywhere at any time, participate in any supply chain, access any raw material, build any product, sell into any market, and none of it would any longer require a military escort. That's globalization, that's free trade, that's the world we know. But there was one catch that we insisted upon. You had to line up shoulder to shoulder, not behind us, not with us, in front of us, to absorb the ammo that might come in from the Soviet Union. We bribed up an alliance to fight the Cold War. And it worked. But the Cold War ended 30 years ago. And in the last 8 presidential elections, we chose the guy who had no interest in maintaining that system. The one exception is this most recent election where globalists didn't even have a horse in the race. That's not an aberration. That's a pattern. Culturally, the Americans are done. That's piece 1. Piece 2 are these graphics. Now, these are demographic profiles. Children at the bottom, young adults, mature adults, retirees at the top, men on one side, women on the other. Mortality tends to build it into a pyramid. Now, this is Canada in 1965, and this is what most of the world looked like until then. Lots of children, few retirees. And that shapes the economic model that a country can use. Because when you have a lot of people down here, it's all about what you buy. You're raising kids, you're going to college, you're buying cars and homes. Very consumption heavy. But young workers are relatively unskilled. They can't produce enough to sustain their consumption habits. So it's low capital because all the money comes from the mature adults. It's high consumption. They tend to import to make up the difference. But the Industrial Revolution, remember, after World War II, global stability meant that everyone could play. People moved off the farm. People moved into town. On the farm, kids are free labor. They're a source of money. When you live in town, especially if you're in an apartment or a condo, kids are just really loud, annoying pieces of furniture that take money. So you have fewer of them. You play that forward 60 years and you get something more like Canada today. Not a lot of young people, not a lot of consumption, not a lot of unskilled workers, but a big bulge here in the 50s and early 60s. Folks that literally have decades of work experience, very productive, very high value added, but with not a lot of people to sell to. So, consumption, investment, government debt, government surplus, importer, exporter. The whole world has gone from this to this. Here are a number of major economies in the year 2000. Kind of right in the middle of the heyday of globalization. From 1985, when it became apparent that détente was going to stick, until 2015, that was the perfect moment for all of us. Because we had a balance of countries that were consumption-driven and importers, and countries that were export-driven and investors. And the United States was holding up the ceiling for everyone, and the Cold War was over. It was perfect. But 20 years later, we are all 20 years older, and I know what you're thinking, that's fake news, but no, that's how math works. Here's where we are now. The moment's over. Even if the United States decided that it still wanted to hold up the ceiling, the economic model that has allowed everything we understand about trade and growth and consumption and investment, it's already gone. It's not coming back. There's your new 10 words. The world you understand is gone. It is not returning. Here's us. We're different. A lot of elbow room in the United States. We industrialized over the course of over 200 years instead of less than 60 for most. We got used to having larger families. That's shaped everything about this country. Let's start with the baby boomers, the green block. They're the largest generation we've ever had. And the thing you must always remember about the baby boomers is there's not a damn thing about them that's special. Oh, come on. There's a lot of Gen Xers in the room. That was hilarious. Anyway, they were born at the same time. They went to school at the same time. They started families at the same time. They entered the workforce at the same time. And now they are retiring at the same time. They are the single largest chunk of our workforce ever. They are the culmination of all of our skill sets. And they're all leaving the workforce at the same time. You want to understand what's going on with inflation today? That's the single most important factor. They're all leaving. And they will never come back. Gen X, that's my generation. We're a little bitter because we've always been outnumbered. We always will be outnumbered. We will not ever be the largest demographic in the country. We have always known that the baby boomers will absorb most of the social spending capacity of this country, and we have always known that the millennials will support them, because if the millennials don't support the boomers with Medicare and Medicaid and the rest, that means that the boomers will have to move in with their kids, and from the millennials' point of view, that is a one-way relationship. Not going to happen. Now, the millennials, large generation, that is true. They are filling out the ranks of the labor force in a way Gen X never could. But they face a challenge. Half of them match the stereotypes. Live in the basement, mom takes them to work at their first job at age 27. Half of that, for them, it's true. The other half, it's not. The other half did everything that we've always expected. They graduated from college in 3.5 years. They did not take an extended adolescence. They went right into the workforce, and then they got slammed up the side of the head by the financial crisis. Ironically, this means the two halves of the generation are in the same place. Whether it's because they took an extended adolescence, or because when they got their jobs, they were the last ones in, so the first ones out, millennials lost 3 to 5 years of work experience. They're behind. They will always be behind. For our labor force to get back to where it was in 2019, we have to wait for the millennials, a large generation, to have kids, and for those kids to enter the workforce. That'll happen in 2045. And then finally, the Zoomers, which are Gen X's kids, smallest generation ever in American history. General Funk's right, there's a recruiting problem, but oh my God, look what's coming. And unlike the millennials, who are social and who are team-oriented, the Zoomers were raised by Gen X. Gen X told them, there will be no break. The government will take everything I have. There will be no inheritance. If you want to succeed, you have to be better than everyone. They are antisocial. Their idea of a dream job is to work in a locked closet coding. Think of it with their fiction. With the millennials, it's Harry Potter. You have a wand, you fly around on a broom, you play some weird-ass three-dimensional version of soccer, and at the end of the day, with the confrontation with the big bad, you don't win because you're smarter or because you worked harder. You win because of who you are. Blah. Then there's the Zoomers. Hunger Games. You too. There's a plastic spoon. Fight to the death using that and only that, and the winner gets lunch. This is not the sort of group that is easy to recruit for anyone who's not in software. But it's nothing compared to what our rivals have to deal with. Oh my God. So here's China in 1950. This little blob here at the bottom, that's what happens when foreign troops stop rampaging through your village. You have a birth boom. 30 years later, this is the demographic structure that terrified Mao Zedong. He was afraid that a young, growing generation of Chinese were literally going to eat the country alive. His solution? the one-child policy.